Howdy there, Isaac here. Today we'll be continuing our second darkest My Hero Academia What If. Last we left off, Izuku had managed to defeat Stain on his own, though only due to the use of Genjutsu. Meanwhile, Shigaraki managed to utilize his Nomu to attack the city, only to be thwarted by the likes of Mirio and Gran Torino. However, we did end off with the cliffhanger regarding the nomification of Stain, and the meeting of Izuku and Mirio. Without further ado, let's get into part 6 of What If Izuku Was a Uchiha? The story starts now. Todoroki and Izuku would go on to help Native and Ida up, them rushing over to where the police and medics were situated. Izuku looked around, seeing various heroes who had been knocked out or who were being treated for their injuries. The only heroes who were still able to stand were Endeavor, Discount Yoda, and All Might Wannabe. Mirio and Gran Torino. Izuku, remembering that Todoroki said these two were apparently able to fight off Shigaraki and Nomu, would immediately run over to meet them. He'd, while carrying Native, report what happened with Stain, the pro hero confirming this story. While telling this story, Izuku saw two very different reactions. Mirio seemed to get excited and had a huge smile and look of pride on his face, while Gran Torino only seemed to frown, one that grew as the story went on. Wow, I didn't know 1A had such a strong guy. I can't believe you actually beat Stain. Too bad one of those Nomu got him first. If only I could control this power. Mirio clenched his fist, with Izuku's eyebrows raising at the comment on controlling power. Mirio suddenly froze, almost as if he had said something he shouldn't have, and Gran Torino's stern look only fueled this theory Izuku had. We did all we could. As for you, young man. Torino turned to the young Uchiha. We'll need to have a talk with the authorities. If you had made even one mistake, you and everyone you were trying to protect could have been hurt, or worse, they could have even died. Gran Torino pulled Izuku off to talk to the police chief, scolding him the whole way for being rather reckless. However, the student paid little attention to the hero's words. Instead, he looked around, seeing the destruction Shigaraki had brought upon the city. Several civilians had met their end, and many more were injured and being treated by first responders. Izuku's eyes turned crimson as his hatred grew, not only for Shigaraki, but for the weakness of the heroes. If only Edgeshot had aimed for Shigaraki's head at USJ, or if All Might were here instead of wallowing in shame and regret. If nobody else would do it, Izuku would. He'd become strong enough to do what nobody else could. If he ever got the chance, he'd end Shigaraki. Personally. Izuku, like in the anime, would go on to fill out a report with the police chief, being scolded by that man too. The chief would go on to notify Endeavor's agency of the incident, as well as Izuku's mother. However, they couldn't get through to her for some reason. This worried the young Uchiha, as his mother often picked up the phone within seconds, not wanting to be rude to others. They tried a few times, Izuku's anxiety growing with each ring, but she never answered. Eventually he was let loose, Burnin being the one to pick him up, only for him to immediately run off, much to her annoyance. The Uchiha wasted no movements, easily outpacing Burnin, running straight for the train station, and once it stopped, running straight to his apartment. From the ground he could see it, a giant hole right where the living room should be. There were no officers or ambulances there yet, but even if they were, Izuku would have ran past them. He dashed up the stairs, nearly breaking down his front door once he got to it, Sharingan activated. Smoke poured out of his apartment, but Izuku pushed past it, walking to the living room as best he could. There, in the middle of the room, was the heavily burned and lifeless Inko. Izuku scanned over the corpse, hoping to find any signs of life or for the possibility that this wasn't his mother, but he found neither. The dark green hair, small remains of the apron she always wore, it all pointed to it being his mother. Tears began running down Izuku's eyes as he dove in to hug his mother for the last time. Her body was hot to the touch, burning him quite badly, but the pain was nothing compared to the pain in his chest. He wept and wept for what felt like forever, though it was only minutes. Izuku then heard what sounded like a sword being sheathed, a sound all too familiar since he had just fought Stain. The young Uchiha looked up to see someone standing within the hole in his living room. The smoke had dissipated now, and there was a very clear view of a tall, slender man with glasses looking towards Izuku and Inko. Did you do this? Did Shigaraki or Stain send you? Izuku yelled, his eyes fixated on the man. I did not kill her, but she is dead because of me. Suddenly, the eyes of the man turned crimson, and Izuku knew exactly who this was. The young Uchiha threw the knife he had saved from Stain, the older Uchiha sidestepping the attack. You've grown a lot at UA, Izuku, but these villains are only going to get stronger from here on out. You'll need something even stronger than just a Sharingan. Izuku rushed his father, not caring to hear anything the man had to say. As far as he was concerned, this man wasn't his father. He was just Hisashi Uchiha. What followed was an intense battle between the two, with Izuku using the walls and environment to his advantage, only for Hisashi to counter each and every strike. The man complimented his son. However, the battle was soon ended when Izuku attempted to cast a powerful genjutsu on his father. Hisashi instantly broke out of it, his eyes changing, the tomo morphing into a different pattern which Izuku didn't even know was possible. Suddenly, Izuku was thrown into a powerful genjutsu, where he was facing what could only be called a demon. The creature was tall and dressed in samurai armor, sporting an oni mask that was, indeed, terrifying, instilling fear into the student, though he didn't know if it was true fear or due to the genjutsu. Izuku attempted to fight, but his body wouldn't move, while the Oni had no trouble slicing pieces of the Uchiha off. This went on for what seemed like hours, Izuku slowly getting chopped to pieces, only he never seemed to die, no matter what was cut or removed. And the pain was unbearable, though Izuku never went unconscious and no adrenaline or shock set in, so he felt every single slice. Whenever there was nothing to slice off, Izuku would be reset, almost like it was some video game, only for him to be cut up all over again. Eventually, after what Izuku could only think was days, the genjutsu ended, and he was back in the living room staring at Hisashi. The young Uchiha immediately fell to the ground, his Sharingan deactivating as all the pain and torment suddenly hit his body. Izuku, at this point, just wanted to sleep, no longer wishing to fight, despite there still being hatred burning within his heart. That was Hachiman, the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, Izuku, Hisashi said as his son began to faint. And to unlock it, you'll need to kill your best friend. With that, Izuku passed out, only waking up within the hospital again. He would go on to write another report about what happened, only leaving out the part about this Mangekyo Sharingan thing. Izuku was initially suspected of starting this fire. However, several witnesses did say they had seen a Nomu in the area, which would make sense since there weren't any signs that a fire had been caused by gasoline or lighter fluid. Izuku was eventually allowed to leave the police station, only he never returned to UA, nor had he gone back to the apartment. To those who knew him, Izuku seemingly just disappeared off the face of the earth, not even answering texts or phone calls. Talk around the class was that he just snapped and went off on his own, or maybe even went to the forest to, commit unalive. However, those who were close, or knew him well, like Tokoyami and Bakugo, didn't believe that was anywhere near possible. Tokoyami knew Izuku had been committed to his mission of becoming stronger and changing the world, while Bakugo knew that damn nerd was too stubborn to give up just like that. Besides, Izuku couldn't be dead. Bakugo still needed to get even with him. However, with the vacancy in Class 1A and the midterms coming up, a new protagonist decided it was his time to strike. Shinzo, with some help from Aizawa, who was seeming more and more tired these days for some reason, was able to get a chance to join 1A. Instead of proving himself in the joint training arc, Shinzo was given the chance to participate in the midterms, those series of fights the students had with the teachers before summer break. Though he would participate with both 1B and 1A, like he did in the joint training arc. Either way, the brainwashing hero would get to show off his new artificial voice cords, and his alright skills with the capture scarf, though he is worse at it than in the joint training arc. And so, Shinzo was able to get into UA's hero course, starting now due to Izuku's absence and them kind of needing the good PR about a general studies kid joining the hero course. That said, we eventually get into the forced raid arc, and oh boy do some interesting things go down here. While not much changes at first, aside from Shinzo training with Dad Zawa, things certainly change when the villains attack. When Spinner and Magne attack the Wild Pussycats, Shinzo is there instead of Izuku, and since he wouldn't know where Kota is, Shinzo would opt to stay and help the heroes. The brainwashing hero felt he needed to prove his worth there instead of running off with Ida and the others, and once he heard Spinner talking up a storm about Stain, he'd strike up a conversation with the Lizard Man. "Hey Spinner, tell me more about Stain's dreams and ideals. They sound pretty interesting." This caught both Spinner and Mandalay off guard, but Spinner would never miss his chance to spread the word of Stain. "Well, of course Spinner suddenly went silent, falling under the control of Shinzo, who swiftly wrapped the villain up in his scarf. This freed Mandalay up to go fight Magne, and together with Tiger, they'd capture the beefy villainess, while Shinzo ran off to get his master. Once Aizawa was able to get rid of those pesky Dabi clones, he'd set out with Shinzo and Ida to go find the other students, though it did take a lot of convincing from those two. Eventually, these three, along with Tiger, made their way through the forest, coming upon a still raging Tokoyami, only for Aizawa and Shinzo to immediately use their quirks on the student, which kinda made the teacher a little proud that Shinzo was so decisive. Either way, Tokoyami would join the crew along with Shoji, who came out of hiding. The group made their way along the trails, however, they soon met face to face with another group, this being the group of villains. There, standing within the woods, were Dabi, Twice, Mr. Compress, Moonfish, and two masked men, one huge and hulking, with the other being rather small and slim. Aizawa immediately erased all of their quirks, and a fight broke out between the two groups. Eraserhead, knowing Dabi was trouble, went to capture him first. However, the smaller the masked men jumped in, grabbing the cloth mid-air and manipulating it to swing behind the Erasure hero. Aizawa went to turn around and kick the villain, only to have a knife driven into his shoulder. The pro hero quickly made some distance between him and the villain. However, this guy was equally as fast and closed the distance. The man grabbed Aizawa's remaining arm and pulled on it while kicking the hero in the ribs, a loud pop sounding out as the arm was pulled from its socket. However, Aizawa did manage to kick the man in the gut as well. The two staggered back from each other, though they both knew who the clear victor was. The man charged Aizawa, landing a series of heavy punches and kicks on the hero, before landing an uppercut that sent the hero flying many yards away. Shinzo, who managed to get Compress under his control, no surprise there, was greatly angered by his master's defeat, and so charged at Izuku, along with his new thrall. The masked man managed to kick Compress away, this distraction allowing Shinzo to get a punch in. The two began to swap hands for a brief period of time, but the masked man was clearly better at close quarters combat. Eventually Shinzo would attempt to use his capture scarf on the man, who dodged the attack and grabbed onto his neck, holding him up in the air. "You're pretty troublesome with that quirk of yours," the man said, breaking Shinzo's artificial voice cords. What about my quirk?" Shinzo said, attempting to trick the villain. "Oh no, your quirk doesn't work on me," the villain said, as his and the other villains' quirks returned to them. Shinzo then realized who this person was, but before he could say anything, a knee plunged into his gut, before a savage kick sent him down onto the ground and into unconsciousness. The man looked back, seeing Dabi stuck in a pillar of ice, though it was now starting to melt. Muscular, who removed his mask by now, was being held by Shoji, but was starting to overpower the student. As for Moonfish, he used his teeth to break free from Tiger, while Twice was still struggling against Ida. And before this masked man was Tokoyami and Bakugo, standing tall and ready to fight him. "I don't think you want to fight me, you two," the man said, grabbing his mask. "Shut up, you damn villain! I'm the one who's going to put your ass behind bars!" Ever the confident one, aren't you, Kachan? Bakugo felt his blood run cold at that, and even Tokoyami froze up. You don't mean that you're... Tokoyami couldn't say it out loud. If he did that, it would confirm a fear he didn't want to be real. Yes, It's me, Tokoyami." The man removed his mask, revealing the scarred face and crimson eyes of Izuku. But that's where we'll be leaving the story for today. If you guys enjoyed, I'd appreciate it if you use Genjutsu on that like button, and maybe even join the League of Subscribers. Hope you guys have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. That's it for now. Bye bye.